Hello, I'm Matteo and I welcome you here in my little RC garage. Thanks for being here and watching. On my workbench is the new Gmade Buffalo. Front and rear axle is already done and now I can start to build the transmission. Step 14 is the assembly of the first transmission output shaft. First, this E-clip. Then this plastic bearing and this small pin. Then the first gear. One more plastic bearing and secure it with a clip. These plastic bearings are not a problem because this gear does not turn on the shaft. On the other side sits one more E-clip. Then a ball bearing and the next ball bearing on the other side. And the first shaft is done. Step 15 is the build of the main gear shaft. First, I insert two bearings into this gear. As next, I apply a bit of grease on the shaft and insert the 2-speed clutch. Be sure to insert this clutch on the correct orientation. There are two different sides marked as A and B. We have to check it to use it as shown in the manual with the position A and B. Then I insert the gear. Add the bearings on the other gear and install it also on the shaft. Here you can see how the clutch will switch the gears. And this gear holds on the shaft with an E-clip. Then comes one more pin, one more gear, and again secured with an E-clip. As last thing, on both sides a ball bearing and this gear shaft is finished. Step 16 is the preparation of the shifting fork. First, the small E-clip, then the fork and another clip to secure it. Step 17 is the build of one more transmission shaft. Here also, E-clips have to be added, plastic bearings and a small pin. As next the gear. And secure it with one more clip. One more pin and gear on the other side. And as last, two bearings to complete this shaft. Now all these shafts are finished and ready to install it on the gearbox. Step 18 explains this work. After applying of a bit grease, I insert the first shaft into the gearbox. Also on the shifting clutch I apply grease. Now every gear is good lubricated and I insert the main shaft into the gearbox also. And as next the third gear shaft. Now I screw on the ball connector on the shifting rod. If you don't like to use the gear shift function, you should install this E-clip on the rod, so it keeps always the first gear. Step 19 is to complete and close the main gearbox. Apply some grease and close the gearbox. Then the next part of the housing. And here install bearings and fix it with an E-clip. Next a small pin and the next gear. And an E-clip again. And one more bearing here. Step 20 is preparing the spur gear shaft. And this shaft is finished also. Step 21 is the installation of the spur gear and slipper clutch. First, insert the spur gear shaft. Then the spur gear housing. Here I add the clutch linings on the spur gear. Then bring together all the parts for the slipper clutch. The spring washers have to be added on the correct orientation as shown in the manual. Now the nut can be screwed on and fully tightened. After this, loosen the nut about 10 minutes to get a proper working slipper clutch. Step 22 is the installation of the spur gear cover. Also on the spur gear I add some grease and close the cover. Step 23 is the installation of the motor plate and pinion gear on the motor. I use this Xeron X brushless combo with 1800 kV. First I have to insert this nut on the motor plate. Then bring these two plates together. This hole have to be on the position of the nut. For the installation on the motor you have to use the holes marked with the tooth of the pinion you use. The included pinion has 13 teeth, so I use these holes. Now I can install the pinion gear. The exact position is not mentioned in the manual, but I measured it out and about 10 to 11 mm from the motor plate is okay. Step 24 is the installation of the motor. Here I have made a mark at the position where I before inserted the nut. When the motor is inserted I have to turn it clockwise until the nut is in the position, and so I can use the screw to fix it. The manual says to turn the motor clockwise for a 13 to 15 tooth pinion and counterclockwise for a 9 to 12 tooth pinion. And here the motor is installed. Step 25 is to screw on the link for the gear shift function. Here you can see how the gear shift rod should move. But this is more important after installing the gear shift servo. Now I have connected a battery and a receiver and I can test the transmission. It looks good, no strange sounds, and the 2-speed gear shift works perfect. So this is enough for the moment. The next steps are the build of the links and the shocks. Stay tuned to see the next video. Thanks for watching and see you soon.